Hi, my name is Charles Freeman, and I would like to introduce to you a man named Shuji Nakamura. Shuji Nakamura was born in Japan in 1954. He is currently a professor at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and he teaches material science, electrical, and computer engineering. But what he's most famously known for is the invention of the blue LED. In Japan, he was born on a little small fishing village. And his father was a maintenance worker, and so he worked a lot with his dad, working with his hands, doing physical labor. He was not considered a naturally gifted student and actually preferred playing volleyball instead of studying and doing well in school. He was wanted to be an athlete and had a very competitive spirit and always wanted to push to win and would never give up and never quit. It did not help him though when he tried to apply for any schools. He applied and wanted to study advanced theoretical physics. And he basically was told that he was not going to ever make money in physics and that there was a waste of his time. And he didn't even pass the entrance exams to get into any of the schools that were known for that type of degree. So he actually chose to go to a school named Tokushima. He ended up choosing electrical engineering. It was considered a more practical degree to get than physics, and he felt like electrical engineering and physics were close enough and that he would still be interested in doing that degree. Turns out he really did not like school. He was very upset that he had to take classes such as art and music and basically all the extracurriculars he was not a fan of and did not want to do. He ended up skipping a bunch of his classes. He preferred to go home and read physics books and study things that he thought was interesting and felt like school was not going to be where he was going to learn what he needed to learn and what he wanted to accomplish. So his junior year of school, however, he took a class on semiconductors, and that class kind of changed his opinion of school, and he decided that it was important enough to him that he was going to stay, finish his degree, and actually would stay long enough to get a master's in electrical engineering at Fukushima. However, his professor was a hands-on learner and believed in technical skills and did not think that they should be learning theory. That wasn't the school that they were at. That was not their focus. He wanted his students to have hands-on physical experience and actually required all of his students to build their own equipment to run experiments for his thesis for his master's. They had a room famously in the school called the junk room, and it was full of old TVs, electrical equipment, different things that had been scrounged up and collected over time that his professor made him take apart and put together and build his own equipment to do his research. He was quoted in an interview later saying that for him, school and the master's program felt like he was at a sheet metal factory or some other kind of mechanical work. So maybe him working with his dad all those years gave him that edge and allowed him to progress and graduate and get a master's degree from the University of Tokushima. Um, Now, the downside of going to the little local college in Japan was you were not necessarily desirable for these bigger tech companies. Um, when he graduated, he was expecting to get hired in by somebody like Sony or Mitsubishi or something, a big tech company that did a lot of research and stuff. Um, they did not want him. And he went through several interviews and got turned down and actually went back to his professor and asked, hey, what should I do? And he didn't really want to move. He kind of wanted to stay close to home. He so his professor suggested he switch careers and did not pursue electrical engineering at all. And so he took the advice and he actually found a company close by and he was going to work at this small struggling electric or chemical company. His first job at this company was to make an LEDs. Like they were going to start producing their own their own red and green LEDs and try and compete with these bigger companies selling the LEDs for people. Well, Nakamura thought that was a waste of time and could see the writing on the wall and decided that if they were going to be successful and if they were going to try and switch up from a chemical company to producing LED lights, they should might as well go all the way. And he actually pitched the CEO the idea that they should produce a blue LED and they should beat the companies like Sony and these other big guys that were already currently working on these things but having no success. Well, at this company, they did not have a lot of money, and he ended up having to basically build his own equipment. And the story of that's really interesting because the science was proven. Like people had invented a blue LED before, but they were using electron scanning beams and could only do it in really small amounts, and it wasn't very bright. It was barely You could barely see it in the dark, and there was no way to produce them other than one at a time. And he kind of came up with a totally different way of doing the blue LED. Uh, One of my favorite quotes from him that I found researching this was remodel in the morning, experiment in the afternoon. And he did that for almost 5 years, where he would come in, he would tinker with his machine, he would weld on it, he would all these different things to make it small adjustments, and then would send off his results that he did that afternoon to a lab somewhere that had to do the testing for him because he didn't have the test equipment. And as he was getting nowhere with these results and was constantly just waiting, he actually ended up going and asking the CEO for it was $3 million at the time, and their money. And the CEO said, you know what, let's go for it, and actually did give him the $3 million, allowed him to buy his own test equipment, and he started making progress with a chemical or a substance called gallium nitride. And the science behind it had been proven, but it wasn't something anybody was working on. Pretty much it had been passed off as not viable, no way it's going to happen. It was considered impossible to make a blue LED out of gallium nitride at the time. However, Shuji Nakamura stuck with it and kept to his guns, and he spent over 5 years working on his equipment, changing the test parameters, and retesting it every day for 5 years. He was famously known for only taking one day off a year, and that was New Year's Day. It was the only day he did not work. Um, needless to say, his company was not happy with him. They needed something they could sell. They were already not making money. They had just invested $3 million, and he wasn't producing anything. And he's also known for saying that the reason why he was successful was because he ignored them and did not listen to what they were telling him to do. Like, I did it on myself. I didn't listen to their advice. They wanted me to do these steps to try and push a product to make money, and I kept telling them no, to the point where he was kind of forgotten in the company, and they just stopped interacting with him. And he, had the CEO's blessing, so everybody else just left him alone because they thought he was a lost cause. Well, on November 29th, they announced that the blue LED exists, a commercially viable blue LED exists. And the next day, on the 30th, there was an article written that's title was Blue LED 100 times brighter. And at first, very few people even believed it. Like most of the companies reading this and like seeing the broadcast and the announcement and all the things that they're putting out about this blue LED just didn't believe it. There was no way that a small chemical company that was barely staying afloat was able to create something that these giant multi-million dollar companies were working on for years at that time. Many years had been working on this technology, and this little tiny company, Royal Japan, figured it out. Um, but once that the proof got out and everybody could see the result in the product, it would actually generate tons of revenue, for Nakamura's company. And actually, 3 years later, he would add phosphorus to the cover of the blue LED, which would make white lighting, make white LEDs. And the white LED is what gives us our modern day lighting. Like, we would not have the lighting we have. We'd still have the old incandescent bulbs everywhere if it wasn't for him making that blue LED. Now, he at the time, after making this white LED, a couple of years later, finally published his first, scientific paper. Well, this did not sit well with his company, and his company, Gia, would sue Nakamura for leaking company secrets. And then Nakamura would sue his company for not compensating him properly. And it turned out that he had only received a $200 bonus, um, for his invention. Like, that's what he got paid on top of his salary. It's $200 for creating, this blue LED, which was bringing in millions, if not billions of dollars of revenue for these guys. And he would actually, in 1999, move to California and was offered a position at the University of California, Santa Barbara, to continue researching blue LEDs and lasers. So he would win a settlement in 2005, and it was for $8.1 million, and that's what ended up him. That's what he ended up getting paid. And it turned out it was the largest payment ever made by a Japanese company to an employee for an invention at that time. Um, so then in 2014, uh, Shuji Nakamura won the Nobel Prize for the blue LED. He won it in physics. So once he received his prize and went through this award ceremony, became, recognized across the world, he reached out to his old company to give thanks and actually put a press release out saying he really is appreciative of that CEO and wanted to come back and make amends and, kind of just squash everything. It's like, it's a long time ago. Company declined and said, we still want nothing to do with you. And he has been heard in interviews recently saying they're still do not talk. Him and his old company are still on bad terms and do not have anything to do with each other. What's cool about this whole story of Shuji Nakamura, in my opinion, the most important part is that he's still currently doing research. He still works in California, and he's recently started his own company, and it's called Blue Laser Fusion. And their goal is to create a fusion energy source with blue lasers. And I know it's world changing. Like, as soon as we come up with fusion energy, that everything in the world will change. It'll probably be just as big of an impact as the blue LED, where everything you look at has a blue or white LED in it. And fusion energy, I think, would be just another step. And it's crazy to think that one man might actually be the person that does that much for the world, and makes that big of a change. And so, with the history of him and what he's done in the past, and the fight and the drive that he went through with the blue LED, it's promising to know that he's the one heading the research for laser fusion. And hopefully one day he's successful and we all get to reap the benefits, and maybe they'll get paid more next time, hopefully. Thank you, guys.